Okay, cool. Now, is this going to actually stay, or is it just going to be like a mess? A glorified mess of a. Because I kind of hate recording with my iPad. Hey, I'm visible. Okay. Now, if my phone actually decides to cooperate, that'd be great. I sent you the link to my channel, but I'll send you the link here as far as from YouTube.
Yeah, if you don't mind doing that, because I think the link to your channel is actually pretty far up in our chat.
Well, I should be live. Yep, I should be live right now. Let me know how it goes on your end here. Just mute yourself on the call real quick. Sending the link here. Yeah.
Alrighty. So mute myself on the call and then hop on.
Well, you could just view. Yeah, mute yourself here. You can check this out. Everything should be going fine.
Alright, where did you send the link? I thought I saw it pop up, but now it's gone.
It's on between you, me, and your friend.
Oh, okay. It's on that chat. Alright. Now I'll mute my...
No, I'm not trying to turn that into a event. Stop. Keep editing. What? No. Exit. All right. How's it sound on your end? Hello, hello, hello. Perfect. Awesome. Wasn't sure. Okay. I'm getting off of Facebook here. I'll send my friend the link. Or rather, friends, the link. Ah! I totally disconnected the call. Crap. Crap, 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 crap. Totally my fault. Hello. Hello, hello. You're muted, by the way. Hello, can you hear me?
Alright. Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so that was my fault because I closed down Discord accidentally when I was closing down the other stuff. Simply put, okay. Since I'm on my phone here, I can look up stuff for Theotokos. It's very hard to get away from how I saw the word originally, Theocles. Theotokos. I know, it sounds a little funny. Yeah. So, would you mind giving a brief description, or rather introduction of yourself, excuse me, when it comes down to, because you're a friend of mine, give or take, and he's on a meme page, Papal Bull. I was considering doing a video on him, but I didn't really know where to start. I didn't really know as far as what to say, what would be okay with saying it, but like Christian meme pages, I think people understand that enough as it is when it comes down to like, hey, check out these funny jokes that we have. But yeah, we share a similar friend there, a common friend, excuse me.
Yeah. So I guess the whole reason I started my meme page is actually because of my husband. He started Shy Guy Theological Seminary first, and he was making memes and having fun and making jokes on it. And I decided it would be a good way for me to share my faith and talk about my faith as well as have some fun with my husband. So I became Dr. Berto, the counselor at Shy Guy Theological Seminary. So that's kind of how I started my meme page, and I didn't really know the direction at the time, but I just started off making a few little memes, basically Christian memes type of thing. I didn't start out doing anything too spicy. It was more along the lines between theology and mental health stuff.
Yeah, you have a heart for other people.
Yeah, and it very quickly evolves into, can we please stop fighting and start finding common ground, particularly between Catholics and evangelicals?
That sounds a little bit. That sounds a little bit like what I do on Telegram, on my Christian chat group, because we got a lot of people there, but they're more on the younger side as far as like teenagers, middle agers, and there's quite a few people from the furry community over there. I'm only saying that because I guess let me take a step back here. I care about a lot of the issues. A lot of these issues, excuse me, is because back in the day I was invited to participate and be with some friends who were in the furry community, and what I saw horrified me. So everything that I have done here has linked back to a couple of things, including that. Young men pursuing sex and relationships with one another rather than seeking improvement, seeking financial stability, seeking careers. They're sacrificing so much for their careers and all that. So that's where it all started for me as far as my channel. And then, anyways, I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to cut in. Go ahead.
No, you're absolutely fine. At the time I started my meme page, my husband and I were Anglican, not Catholic. And it was actually because of people like Papal Bull inviting us to places like the Ecumenical Ark and Catholic Corner, Discord groups.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That we became more familiar with the Catholic faith. And, he was willing to, really answer our questions, and he was willing to go into deep dives. And eventually we were like, we can't deny it anymore. This is the church that Jesus founded. So now we are Catholic meme pages. So that's kind of how our meme pages have evolved.
Mature. I would say mature. Because when you're finding yourself, your calling, stuff that wasn't clear before, you can settle down finally in a place that is your own. Evolving is a good way to say it without actually saying that you're settling down.
Yeah, because now it really is more about proclaiming the truth and teaching the truth in a way that people will hopefully receive it. And as you have seen, people don't always receive it too well.
Unfortunately, a lot of... Yeah. No, go ahead.
Yeah, at this point, it's really a lot about educating people because, there's not a single person, that may not be completely true, but there are very few people that actually hate the Catholic Church, but there's a whole lot of people who hate what they believe about the Catholic Church.
Well, their history isn't, crystal clean. Whose history is crystal clean after all? When people actually start thinking back to the fact that we are messy, when you have made a lot of mistakes and bad choices, it's really hard to start to point fingers. People who are first to point fingers usually are the ones that are having the most issues, anger issues generally.
Exactly.
Well,
exactly. And
I shouldn't generalize.
Historically, Protestants were just as bloody, if not worse, than we were, historically speaking. So, as far as who's got the most blood on our hands, it's actually about equal.
As when there are revolutions and when there are breaking between, what are those breaking called between the churches, between the denominations?
So, in Catholic terms, we often call them schisms.
Thank you, schisms. That's what I was thinking of, schism.
But in the evangelical world, they'll probably just call it a division or a church split.
Yeah, division. I thank you for bringing that up too. So whenever a schism or division happens, when one group breaks off from another and says that, and they make a declaration of who they are, it can get bloody. Like in history, these have not gone the way where they were 100% peaceful. People ended up dying from some of this stuff. And it's sad because this is faith, this is spiritual stuff. This isn't something where people should lose their lives over. It's personal. And I have to say, anyone who is anyone who's getting pissed off and upset at other people for personal beliefs need to check themselves. I have an issue with, since I was deployed during 2008 and 2010, I have an issue with the radical elements of the Muslim faith who feel it is their job to take away the lives of those who do not share the same faith. I was very much against them, and I was very vocal back then. I'm less vocal now because I've seen how people have changed and all that. Anyway, I'm not trying to get off the topic of the Mother of Mary, but as far as your introduction goes, is there anything else?
I can't think of anything that would be really relevant to the conversation. Mainly, I just want people to know kind of how we met, a little bit about the meme page. In fact, if there's anybody on this live who doesn't follow me on Facebook, you can follow me as Dr. Birdo. And for anybody who doesn't know who Birdo is, that is a character from a Mario game. She was like part of Mario's nightmare, basically.
I remember that briefly. I was never wholly invested in the Mario world, but like some of the games were actually pretty fun. So yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. I really liked Mario 64.
Mario 64 is a classic. Absolutely loved it. I've never beat it myself, but I hope one day I can actually do that. It's very hard and challenging with getting all the stars.
I never beat it either.
Yeah, getting enough stars to get to the end boss fight. Yeah. Oh my word! I'll get there one of these days. So Theotokos, I have it here on starting off with Google. Excuse me while I throw up. Theotokos is a title of Mary, Mother of Jesus, used especially in Eastern Christianity. The usual Latin translations are De Genitrix or Dea Para. Am I getting those two right?
I'm honestly not 100% sure. I actually went and looked up the etymology of Theotokos, but it doesn't really go too much into the Latin in the etymology.
Right. Well, either way, I just want to start that off there because, frankly, when it comes down to Mary, the mother of Jesus, that's a topic I personally haven't really covered. The focus on when it comes down to Christmas has usually always been on Jesus, his birth, the events surrounding his birth, the proclamation of the angels to the shepherds, and the shepherds rushing to the city, being like, "Look at what happened! This is amazing!" So, like, all the events surrounding Christmas has always been on, like, Jesus' birth. And that's just because, for me, my family, we were in the evangelical side of things. So, the church that we went to previously, did a lot of focus on evangelism, in short.
Yeah.
All right. I don't like Wikipedia. Britannica, I don't know. But you and Papa Bull and some others were releasing some messages and stuff about that, which really caught my interest. I was like, this is a really cool topic. And now that Christmas is here, I feel like this is a perfect timing. So, like, I definitely want to say thank you for bringing this up, because this is still somewhat new to me. Now,
You're welcome, and I'll try to give you as much information as possible.
Yeah. When it comes down to Facebook here, was it your post or was it his post on some of these topics of Theotokos? Because I can point some things out there. There was some good stuff there, but was it on your page or was it on...
I had posted something about how the Vatican was removing a couple of Marian titles from popular use. One of those titles was like co-redemptrix, because those titles were causing more confusion. And there was somebody who came on to my page and said to get rid of Theotokos too.
Yeah, I remember that.
That poor fellow got slammed. Like, everybody from pretty much both worlds was like, no.
Oh, well,
Theotokos is a description of Jesus,
well,
as much as it is Mary.
Here's something else too. The Bible, the post that he made was, Papa Bull made, was the Bible clearly and obviously tells us that our Blessed Mother remained a virgin for her entire life. 50%, if I'm not wrong, around 50% of the conversation was she a virgin when she gave birth to Jesus? Like, that is one of the biggest things, one of the biggest struggles with her identity. And Theotokos is one of those titles that, like, reaffirms not just who she was and her role, but the fact that the Bible verses as well, like, they're also confirmed too with what was said to her about being a virgin, if I'm not mistaken here.
Well, the title Theotokos isn't so much related to perpetual virginity. Pretty much all Christians believe that she was a virgin at the time of Christ's birth, but a lot of Christians in the Protestant and evangelical world, Protestant and evangelical are two slightly different things.
Yes.
But a lot of Protestants no longer believe in her perpetual virginity, meaning that for the entirety of her life she remained a virgin, even though she was married to Joseph. The Catholic position is that she remained a virgin forever, even after the birth of Christ. Theotokos simply means God-bearer, or Mother of God. So, people have a problem with that title because they don't really know the history of that word. They don't know what the church was trying to address when they gave her that title. But there was a heresy going around known as Nestorianism.
Nestorianism.
I believe that. Yeah, I believe it was the Nestorian heresy, where they were trying to separate Jesus, both his human nature and his divine nature. They were trying to separate those two natures, and saying that Mary was only the mother of Jesus' human nature.
Do you want me to read off? I can look it up on Wikipedia and read off what it says there. Nestorism.
Yeah, about Nestorianism.
Oh, Nestorianism. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Ever since Wikipedia locked me out from making edits, I just basically said I don't care whenever they're asking for donations, which is when they're asking for donations now. No, I refuse.
Huh.
They're awful. Anyway, Nestorism is a term used in Christian theology and the church history to refer to several mutually related but doctrinally distinct sets of teachings that fall under the umbrella term dia,
Mm.
di, di, diaphysitism. Diaphysitism. Dyophysitism, such as two natures in Christ, parentheses, human and divine, or two persons in Christ, the man and the word, parentheses again. The extent to which these two definitions are actually distinct is also debatable. The first meaning of the term is related to the teachings of Christian theologian Nestorius. All right, moving down here. Because that's saying what it was, but it's not showing the... Okay, you were saying, what was it about now again?
So there were people who were trying to say that Mary was not the mother of Jesus' divine nature, and there were even those who were trying to say that Jesus didn't have a divine nature at all. But we understand that from Scripture that Jesus is God. So they called Mary the Theotokos, or the God-bearer, meaning that she was the mother of Jesus, and Jesus is God incarnate, or God in the flesh. So God came down, became a man, and he became a man in Mary's womb. And that's what the term Theotokos is about. Where a lot of people, particularly in the evangelical community, get really messed up is they have been told the lie that the Catholic version of Mary is just a retelling of the old pagan goddess stories. And, if you look into those stories, a lot of the pagan goddesses would give birth to gods. But in order to do that, they would always have to have, sexual relations, which Mary did not do. So, in a lot of evangelical minds, the idea that she could be the mother of God is a pagan idea, but it's not. It's very much rooted in Christian theology.
Yeah, see, when it comes down to that, what was my train of thought? Give me a sec, I just lost it. Yeah, Joseph had a mind to divorce her because of the whole, like, oh, you're having a kid now. You're having a kid now, and that means you're unfaithful. Because how can you have a kid and be faithful to me at the same time, to be betrothed? Oh, that's what the issue is. Okay, there we go. Oh, my iPad. I can't get this situated to save my life. Terrible. Oh, it's on my soda can, too. I have a soda in here. That's why I was so just all over the place. All right. So I'm going to link that down below so people can take a look at that. The divine nature and the human nature, how can that come from one being? Frankly, I think this is my personal thoughts. When it comes down to implanting the seed in her womb, I believe there are genetic components that are missing that would be tied to where sin would be, which would be like the blood. I think there are parts that were supplied by God, but the seed itself, I struggle with that. So divine birth, this is my opinion. A divine birth without a father, and the parts that would be needed by the father would be replaced in the sense of keeping sin out of the picture entirely. That is entirely needed, because if you're going to have a savior, you have to have him spiritually alive. Everyone else, to my knowledge, has been born spiritually dead. Our eyes have yet to be opened. I'm going to go back to Bloodborne when they talk about the old blood. Our eyes have yet to be opened. And there's some really cool phrases there when they talk about the old blood. The gods that fell down to the earth, and how we can only see so much. And that is reflected in the game, because you have to make so much progress in order to actually unlock the ability to see the giant eldritch beings attached to the side of the buildings. And when you do, it's absolutely freaky at first. I'm not going down a side trail, I'm just making a point there. You know, your eyes have to be open to be able to see and to comprehend, and for some of the stuff to make sense, or else it just sounds alien-like, for lack of a better word. Those who are spiritual, it's going to come off as more of like an abomination, or it's going to be something that is against their faith rather than sounding like an alien-like. That's my opinion.
What you were saying before about how Christ had to be incarnate without sin, that actually leads to another almost purely Catholic doctrine, and that is the Immaculate Conception of Mary.
I've heard of that, yeah.
It is believed that she was conceived without sin. Therefore, she did not pass sin on to Jesus.
What's the official standing on that, and what are your thoughts on that?
So, that one was a tough one for me. So the official stance is that she was immaculately conceived. So that's the Catholic stance. You have to believe in the Immaculate Conception of Mary in order to be Catholic. You know, that is a dogma of ours. And a lot of people have trouble with that because I believe it's in Romans, it says all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. Or depending on the translation you read, all have fallen short of God's glorious standard.
Yes.
So
correct.
People take that to mean that if everybody sinned, except for Jesus, of course, that must mean that Mary sinned too. And the Catholic Church is like, no, she was an exception.
Well, that's why I stated the way I did. I stated because Jesus was, regardless of whether or not Mary had sin in her or not, Jesus was born spiritually alive. One of the distinctions between the differences between him and everyone else. We are born, that's what I believe anyway. Like, I want to go that way rather than the way that the Immaculate Conception way is, because there is a difference there. I mean, sin is still in the picture, but there is a difference there.
Well, here's one way to look at it. Jesus is intrinsically good because he is God. Mary was good because God bestowed her with a special grace so that she could conceive the Messiah. You see, God chooses each of us in our womb for a specific purpose to fulfill, and Mary's purpose was to be his mother. So God specifically chose her in the womb and protected her from the human desire to sin, so that she could be a perfect vessel to carry Jesus.
It's probably in the sense of keeping her safe from supernatural forces that would want to either end her life, that would want to scar her, traumatize her, you know, things along the lines that would go above and beyond what normally would happen. Scrapes, bruises, things where it's a part of everyone's life. You know, she doesn't have a tragic backstory. She's not overcoming some personal grief or whatever. So in that sense, people's purposes can be tied directly to what they've gone through. You know, it can be a part of their identity even. Nature versus nurture. So by God directly, not just choosing her, but directly keeping her safe, there's a lot that's going to be said there. The Immaculate Conception is something I thought about for a while too, but it never really sat right with me per se, but I think it's just because of the whole spiritually alive versus spiritually dead. You know, being born cut off. And as I talked with Manuel, I talked about this a couple months ago. You know, when you're born spiritually dead, you're already in a world that is condemned to be cut off from God. And that is horrifying and very disturbing, because then the next question is, well, what about babies? Well, they're born already spiritually dead. You know, Jesus doesn't.
That's why we baptize them.
Well, Jesus, yes. Oh, yeah. But baptism for some is going to be symbolism, but for others, it's going to be so much more. It's a rebirth. But in Jesus' case,
for us, it's a very true rebirth. Yeah.
I mean, Jesus was baptized 2 times. No. Well, the only time it's officially that I remember was him and...
He was baptized Yeah, he was baptized once in the Jordan River by John the Baptist.
Yeah.
And he didn't really need to be baptized, but when he was baptized, the Holy Spirit descended on his shoulder in the form of a dove, and God the Father spoke from heaven saying, "This is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased." And that's kind of where the idea of baptism of the Spirit comes in. Because we believe that when we are baptized, the Holy Spirit descends on us, just like he did Jesus, and he gives us new life. And we want that for our kids, and that's why we baptize our babies.
That's one of the reasons why, yes, it's not just a declaration, but it's a way to protect your kids.
Yeah.
I think it's to be noted that in Jesus' case, for him to be able to save anyone, he himself has to be in a separate category in order to do the saving. So if he himself needs to be saved at birth, that is not reflected well on either him or on Mary. That's something that, like, I need to point that out too.
Even Mary had to be saved. Like, even for her to be immaculately conceived, she still had to be saved by God. She had to be saved by God from the temptation of sin. She could not have achieved it on her own. Jesus achieved it on his own because he's God. That's really what separates the two, is Jesus is God. He did it on his own. He has always been perfect. He has always existed from the very beginning.
Well,
And
let's take a step back here for a second. How much of Mary's nature was imparted onto Jesus? Because part of the kids come from the parents.
That is such a great question. We see that when Joseph suspected Mary of committing adultery, he was going to put her away quietly so she would not be stoned. Later, we see Jesus rescuing an adulterous woman by saying, "Those of you who are without sin, throw the first stone."
And it's been theorized.
We see Joseph's protective nature come out in Jesus.
It's been theorized that Jesus wrote on the ground the sins that these men were committing in the process of accusing the woman. And frankly, I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised if some of his teaching method came from either Joseph or came from Mary. So, like, the parents have such an instrumental role in teaching the kids on how to be or how to do things that it becomes a part of their nature. Mary, I am almost certain there's a lot from her that rubbed off on him that became a part of his nature, on the human side. So, like, it's kind of a cool topic in the sense of how much did Jesus learn and how much of who he is directly attributed to her. Because as the mother of God, this is going to play such a phenomenal role. And I know a lot of other people have not thought about that. How much of the mother did rubbed off onto her son, onto Jesus. And you know what? I'm pretty sure she didn't feel the pressure of, oh no, this is God's son. It was someone special. But anyone who is recognizing they're in a position where they are raising the Son of God, the stakes are elevated, the stakes are raised, and therefore they become a lot more stressed out. I think it was only at the end of Jesus' life and career, his ministry, so to speak, that she became aware of the stakes. She became aware of, like, his entire ministry. I would almost say this plays into the whole where Jesus tells one of the disciples, John or Luke, one of those two, to go take care of his mother when he's gone. I can't remember who.
It was John. It was John.
John? Yeah, thank you. You got to take care of the mother, that's for sure. Talk about painful circumstances back then. Widows?
Well,
widows weren't always treated well.
John also represents the church. So we are actually tasked with inviting Mary into our home and, giving our devotion to her. That's what we believe as Catholics. Because John refers to himself as the beloved disciple. He doesn't really refer to himself as John. And it is believed that he did that on purpose because each and every one of us are supposed to be Jesus' beloved disciple.
Yeah. Well, my name, David, beloved is a part of that name as well, as far as like a meaning behind it. So I hear that, I see that, and to a point,
Yeah.
it has been exhibited. But it's not been for naught. I've worked to try to be fun to be around, friendly, someone who other people want to be around, and all that. And frankly, to be beloved isn't just simply to take. You have to show that you are worth being around, that you are worth being
Yeah.
not just loved, like not just liked, but loved. There we go. Let me rephrase that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. My real name actually means beloved friend. So.
Ah, close then, close.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would still say keep some of the personal details limited here, mostly because
Oh yeah.
I don't know how big my channel. This is a bit of a side thought here. I don't know how big my channel is going to get, but the idea behind the whole like in his mind, again, I think differently. I'm different. I have a different background. All of that. In some ways, it's amazing because someone like me shouldn't exist. I shouldn't even be alive in today's world. But frankly, I'm still here, and I'm thankful, despite the failures, despite the mistakes. It is amazing the journey that I've been on. The people I've talked to, the stories, all of this stuff matters. And frankly, there's a lot to be thankful for. In this particular case, when talking about Jesus, Mary, the mother, being able to look at things from different angles happens naturally. But I do have to think. I do have to like put some energy down and being like, all right, let me pull up some information and see what pops out of me. It's not free. It doesn't come without effort or work, you know? Oh, that's funny.
Speaking of names, so Jesus' Hebrew name is Yeshua or Yehoshua, which actually translates into English as Joshua, but it got translated into Greek first, so now we got stuck with Jesus. But his name actually means he who saves.
Yep. There's some cool books on the thing about Joshua. So like, I appreciate that because it offers a different side to Jesus, a more human side in a sense. Because when it comes down to talking about Jesus, people can go to the divine side, they can go to the human side. The human side is less known, sadly. It's less talked about as well. He was a carpenter. He was the son of a carpenter.
Oh, yeah.
And it's been theorized that he worked more with stone than wood because stone was a lot more common than wood.
Yeah, especially in that area, yeah.
And somewhere...
I believe the word for that was tecton, somebody who worked with both.
Run that by me again?
Yeah, I was saying that I believe I heard once that the Greek word for that was tecton.
Tecton.
So somebody who worked with both stone and wood.
Interesting.
One
Dave
of
Jones.
my favorite places to think about like the human nature of Jesus is the Garden of Gethsemane, where he's praying that God would take this cup from him, and he's sweating blood.
My friend popped on to say hi. Hope you're doing all right, Dave. He's an old buddy of mine. Yeah.
Lots of Daves.
David, all of that's pretty popular. And I told some other ones as well, so who knows if they popped in to go check this out. This stuff is really awesome because discussions, discourses, dialogues, it's not just an exchange of ideas or beliefs, but in the case of when talking with Olin, I believe it was Olin Baker from Cold Dead Hands, politics. In a sense, this is these discussions are also a part of politics. You know, you're bringing
Yeah.
you're bringing your thoughts and your beliefs together, and
Mhm.
that's one of the basic components of what politics actually is. I've lost friends to that, so for me, I'm a little wary. It's not fun and friendly like it once was. Maybe you can get back to that, but you still have to kind of put up like
I
protection,
better.
fences, stuff like that. You got to protect what is important and what is dear to you.
Well, I will say this: I am a member of the Kingdom of God first and foremost. America second.
I will agree on that, but I will say it's been quite a very difficult journey to get to that point of being able to say that. It,
Okay.
the
Well, that's
journey,
a very hard thing to say, especially for somebody who has fought for this country.
well, there's a lot that's been challenged and tested, and this country has failed, not necessarily me, thankfully, but the country has failed other veterans where I've seen that, and I'm like, it's hard.
Mhm.
I've seen other veterans burn their uniform and denounce the country. I've seen other veterans get ignored to the point where they just self deleted. They're gone. And they're saying,
Yeah.
I can't deal with this anymore. It's
Mhm.
there's a weight to that when you say that I'm putting his kingdom first rather than my country. Because the gravity of that is felt when you say those words. I believe words have a power. I was actually talking to a friend of mine earlier, and I said, we were talking a little bit about energy and stuff like that. It's a side topic, side trail. I need to look more into that. I need to do a part 2. I did a part 1 a couple months ago, and it was pretty interesting, and there is biblical support for energy. So that surprised me.
Yeah.
If you're interested, there's a couple videos down that there's a link in the description. Anyway, point in case, energy tied to words. Words have power. God and Jesus both use curses. They use blesses. So energy.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'm gonna quote the Bible here. The power of life and death is in the tongue.
exactly. Thank you. Now, to be able to sink entire ships, or to start the passion. There's something else too about getting someone so worked up and passionate. I can't remember the verse, but there's something about that. Being able to
There's a lot
inspire
of
others.
about being worked up and passionate. There's one like be angry and sin not. There's also one fathers provoke not thy son to wrath.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't let your anger control you. That type of thing.
There's stuff about disciplining your children. You know, teach your children right so that they grow up correctly. I'm paraphrasing.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, it's.
And depending on which version of the Bible you read, like I've got the Catholic version, and there are a lot more verses about that than in the Protestant Bible.
For anyone who's on the stream watching, here's a little treat. The Ethiopian Bible. I have it right here. I know it's a little backwards.
Ooh.
Yeah. The most complete Ethiopian Bible. In English, 1,300 books. Yeah. So, out of curiosity, what's one of the books that talks more about Mary? Trying to go back on topic here. Which of the 4 books? John, Mark, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Which of those 4 books?
So Luke, I think, talks the most about Mary. So Matthew tells the story of the birth of Jesus from Joseph's perspective. Luke tells it from Mary's.
Thank you. 466. Page 466. I love how they organize some of these. Let me go back here real quick. Oh, this is a little awkward. When they talk about Genesis, the first book of Moses, Exodus, the second book of Moses, And as far as this, the book of Luke, the good news according to Luke. Oh yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
love that. 466. Big pages for a lot of small words. Funny enough. Now they split these off into two parts. Interestingly, 463. I'm trying to be considerate of the time. It is past 10. All right.
Yeah.
The good news according to Luke here. What verse? Okay. Verse 5, there was in the days of Herod, the king of Judea, a certain priest named Zacharias of the priestly division of Abijah, Abijah. He had a wife of the daughters of Aaron, and her name was Elizabeth. So that's talking about John's parents, and how his parents were visited by an angel as well. Oh, yeah. Okay, now going back down to 25? 26?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I know the Hail Mary is around verse 42, I think.
26. Now in the, you said 40 something. Yeah, that's on the top part of the next page here. Now in the
so you probably want to start a few verses ahead of that.
Now in the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent from God to a city in Galilee named Nazareth, to a virgin pledged to be married to a man whose name was Joseph, of David's house. The virgin's name was Mary. Having come in, the angel said to her, "Rejoice, you highly favored one. The Lord is with you. Blessed are you among women." This leads me to ask you another question. You know how Abraham's wife, Sarah, or rather Sarai, was changed from Sarai to Sarah, from the mother to one of the mothers. Why is Mary's name not changed, after she had Jesus? Shouldn't her name be a reflection?
I don't know what the name Mary means, actually. I know that Maria was a very common name back then. But now I want to Google in what does the name Mary mean?
Yeah, go for it. There's not much changed from what I remember as far as what was said in NIV version of Luke. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of similarities from what I'm reading here versus NIV and all that. Yeah. 41.
This is interesting. It says
Go
that
for
the
it.
name Miriam can mean bitter, rebellion, or beloved.
Oh, beloved. Nice.
So that's interesting. Bitter and rebellion. Mankind has been in a state of bitter rebellion. Eve was in a state of bitter rebellion, but Mary was beloved.
Huh. Well, we're born into a state of rebellion in a sense, and that doesn't sit right with me, because it's like we're having our fates already decided before we were even born. That doesn't sit right at all. Ugh.
Well, our fates aren't necessarily decided. We actually do get to choose our own fate. We get to choose to follow God or to follow our own ways.
We do have to make a conscious choice for sure, yes. That's ultimately why I ended up believing free will actually exists, is because we have to choose. We have to make a conscious decision on some of these things that cannot be made by anyone else. We have to apologize. We have to, not just... When it comes down to Jesus, when it comes down to being saved, we're the ones who have to make that declaration, that proclamation. We're the ones who have to give that testimony, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, the Holy
Confession. We have
Spirit
to make
is
that
the one who
confession.
invites us in. You know, Jesus said nobody can come unless the Spirit draws them, which is where a lot of Calvinists get their ideas from.
I
But
was.
I do believe we have the free will to answer that call.
I'm.
If that makes sense.
Yes, it does. I am strictly under the idea that, we have to be called by a spirit. That whole phrase that you said, we have to be at a point in our lives where we are at a particular place where we are able to be reached by God, by others, so that when the truth hits us, we are able to receive it.
Yep.
Because
and a lot of times that unfortunately means hitting rock bottom for a lot of people.
Fortunately, it depends on how you look at it because of what you lose. If you lose that which you value, that's one thing. If you lose that which is taking your life away, addictions come to mind. Drug addictions, some people hit rock bottom and they can no longer afford these addictions that are ruining their life. And so they start the heavy and hard process of withdrawal that gets them back out into a place where they can get back up, so to speak. There's a guy who I heard his testimony, and frankly, I had to fight off a little bit of jealousy because he hit rock bottom, but he's currently married. He's currently part of a church, if not leading a church, leading a business, not a church, excuse me. And I'm just like, that is amazing. Why hasn't that happened to me? I feel like I'm stuck in a sense. Not stuck, but like, I personally don't know what my calling is. I don't know what my profession is outside of like what I'm currently doing, which is private security. So like, it's a struggle for me when I hear other people being successful, and I have to remind myself like I am successful, but like, anyway, it's not about me. It's just I hear other people's stories, and I
definitely understand those sentiments because I've heard powerful testimonies like that too, where they were in this terrible place, they hit rock bottom, they lost everything, then they found Jesus, and then they got everything. And I'm just like, why hasn't that happened to me? And for me, stuff like that didn't start happening until we started joining the Catholic Church. And now we're making great friendships.
Your blessings are starting to pile up and show.
Yeah, like we're receiving blessings now that we didn't think were ever going to come our way.
That's an entirely different topic for me. I hopefully will one day do a video talking about blessings, but the blessings that have been in my life have been puzzling because there's no discernible pattern for when they happen, and it feels like it's random at times where it's like I'm being blessed at different times, not like I'm almost 40. I'm like 39. So like being blessed, a lot of blessings have already happened, and there's a lot that puzzles me. So like one day I may talk about that, but I can't talk about it now because it feels way too random and nothing is really settling down as far as that goes. All right. Was there anything else more about this? Because this is a great topic, and frankly, the name was... I'll be thinking about that for quite some time, as I said before. Mary, the Mother of Jesus.
Oh, yeah.
I'm single. I don't have the best... I wish I had better social skills. I wish I was able to talk to women better. And I know Catholics and others have talked... I know this is also on the Facebook post as well. Let me go back to the Facebook thing. Let me see about Papa Bull there real quick here, because go to his page, blah, blah, blah. When it comes down to Theotokos, something to do with... Oh, there we go. Enters... It's a church of that... It's a picture of the guy stretching out or whatever. Enters proto-church, sees nativity scenes, nice... Makes the comment, nice Mary statue, quote unquote, and then leaves. And then he says, Christmas, the time of year where certain Christians who are normally very much so against statues of Mary and the saints, all of a sudden have no problem with them. And I know it's kind of like
Oh
teasing there.
yeah.
Yeah, I get that. But like,
Last year I took a picture of my nativity set and I put it on the meme page and I said, I've just pulled out my idols for Christmas or something like that. And somebody thought that I was legit using them as idols. And I'm just like, it's a nativity set. It's just there for looks and to remind us what the season is about.
well, iconography is also not taught in the other denominations like it is with the Catholics. You know, this is a representation of Mary, Mother of Jesus, or this is a representation of my favorite saint or of Jesus himself. So in that case, it's like, oh, it's a representation. It's not an idol. But the joke there is lost on those who are not familiar with this. And
Exactly. Or it's lost on those that are so convinced that we're committing idolatry anyway.
well, it's like, we're not praying to it. No, geez, you got it a little backwards. It's definitely, it hits hard until it starts clicking. You're like, oh, that's what you mean.
Yeah.
It's funny what you can get right or wrong. That's for sure.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the quote-unquote disagreements between Catholics and Protestants really boils down to semantics. You know, just our use of words and our understanding of words. Like, you know,
it always does, doesn't it?
I really wish we would change it to pray with, because I think we do need to modernize our language a little bit. But, you know, back in the medieval era, to pray to somebody was simply to make a request. So you go before a queen or a king and you pray to them for whatever it is you want. You pray to them for justice, like, I prithee. And when Catholics say, I'm going to pray to Mary, or I'm going to pray to this particular saint, you know, in modern times, everybody thinks that's a form of worship. And it's not. I'm literally just asking them to pray for me.
I'm under the speculation, I'm under the idea that this is intercession, that they're asking for help. They're trying to get someone to help them on their behalf. This isn't idolatry. This isn't anything else.
Exactly.
And I know my dad and I, we're on different parts on some of this stuff, but this whole thing about, like, well, why do you need to pray to the saints when you just pray to Jesus? And I was like, well, the idea of, you know, more prayers is, you know, more people praying is more success, more likelihood of being protected, that sort of thing. It's great to pray to Jesus, but you can also pray to others to ask for more help. You know, think of it as, here's a fire extinguisher, and then you're getting more people coming up with more fire extinguishers, you know, in case there's a fire or something like that. Just a very simple concept there of, like, more prayers equal more success, or the likelihood of more success. Now, there's this one story of that comes to mind. I'll tell it quickly. It's a group of people over in Africa somewhere, and I'm forgetting some of the details, but the part I remember is they were giving out medicine, helping out others, and one of the people had to go in town to get more supplies or whatever. Two locals were thinking about jumping him, tailed him back so when he got to the supplies and went back to the group out of the town in another location. They stopped for the night, but they weren't attacked because they saw like 16 guards around these people. And they're like, wow. So when the people came back into town again for supplies, the two guys came up to him and be like, who are those guys around you? And it turns out that people got a urge to pray for these two I think they're missionaries. So these two missionaries that had these supplies, they were prayed for and they were protected. And the idea there is, if it was one person praying, it would have just been one angel. But since these were like 16 people, 16 angels were there. So, like, more prayers is a likelihood of more success because there's more protection. So like my dad's not wrong, but I have to say when it comes down to defense, having a safeguard, having a very strong defense is equally important too, so that you are less likely to be tempted, you're less likely to be affected when things go sideways. You're more protected. More protection is better, you know?
Oh, yeah. Well, and on the Catholic side, Mary is the most prayed to human being on the planet Earth, and it's because she is Jesus' mother, and Jesus, being perfect, does what his mother tells him to do, right? Like, we see it at the wedding of Cana.
Yeah.
We see it when he found him at the temple. It's like, hey, come on home. So Mary is an extremely powerful intercessor, but you're right, the numbers definitely help too.
If I was going to pray to Mary,
a lot of us have devotions to saints that are not Mary.
If I was going to be praying, talking to Mary at all, it'd be like, please help me be able to talk to more women in better, healthier ways. Please. Because I want my social skills to increase to the point where I can have a wife that is complementary to me. Mostly because I'm under the impression that I'm not meant to be alone. I'm meant to be with someone else. It's a personal struggle there because I hate being single. And it has taken me 4 years to accept where I'm at. And I cannot accept being single for the rest of my life, but I have to accept something. So like in between there is I accept being single for the time being, right here, right now. I just can't accept being single for like all of eternity. I meant here during this life of mine currently.
Well, let me ask you this, and it's not meant to be, offensive in any way, but have you considered joining a Christian fraternity?
Joining a college?
No, not a cult. So in Catholicism, we've got monks and friars. So it's a way that people can live in community, but they're also not partaking in marriage, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So human beings were not meant to be alone. And there are people who do that, who take vows of celibacy and poverty and whatever, but they remain living alone. There are people who do that and choose the hermit life, but a lot of times people take vows and then they go join a community. So a lot of people think, I need to be married in order to not be lonely. But at least in the Catholic Church, we do have other options. So marriage is an option, joining, a fraternity, like becoming a monk or a friar is an option. And of course, living a single life alone is also an option. I know a lot of priests do that. A lot of priests live alone, but there's also a lot of priests who are part of a monastery. So it really just all depends. But, I know in the Protestant world, a lot of times we think there's only two options. I can either live alone or I can get married. But in Catholicism, there's a third option. So I was wondering if that was ever an option you considered.
Nope. It's being a part of a brotherhood is probably the closest thing ever, and if that was the case, I would look for opportunities to go back to something like Teen Challenge or whatever, where I can actually work with other guys who are struggling, because that's an environment I was already part of when I went through Teen Challenge, the version for youth. I went there for the boarding school part, not the drug rehab part, just because I was removed from school due to allegations and issues, and it was better for me to stay away for a while. I was not popular when I was a kid, and problems ended up popping up, and it was just a mess. Of course, being socially awkward makes it a whole lot worse. Not saying the right things, and of course having people twist your words around to make it look like you're a criminal. Oh yeah.
especially if they're the ones that are actually guilty.
Well, I would say if in today's world, if this would have happened and they were caught, they would have been criminalized. Yeah, but this happened like.
I have found in my own life the people who are pointing fingers at me usually have three pointed at themselves. So if they're twisting my words to make me sound like I'm worse than I am, they usually are the ones that actually have the problem.
Well, yeah. That I've heard of something very similar to that as well. But as it is, who knows one way or the other if I ended up being married or if I be a part of something else where there's a group of guys that I help out with. It can go either way, but until certain things happen, like marriage itself is a two-way relationship that is basically unlocked when there's someone who's interested in you, who wants to go along with you to be a part of your life. There's a lot of questions and unknowns until that is unlocked by the other person and you're able to see beyond into another future down the road where your life is going along with someone else's life, living together. Otherwise you're living by yourself, and I don't think that actually can. I don't think any part of that can really be played around a little bit. Like Mary, she was with Joseph. Give me a second. Since Joseph said that he had thought about leaving her when she found out that she was pregnant, those two were already together in some form, some capacity, but they weren't necessarily living together. The separation still is occurring there. The point I'm trying to...
So they were married and not living together. So in that culture, you would get married and then the groom would prepare a house for both of you to live in. And usually about a year or so later, he would come get you and then you'd move in together. And there'd be a feast or something surrounding that.
The entire point, let me take a step back here. The entire point that I was making was it's a little hard to bring what I'm saying here back to topic here on Mary before we wind down and all that. But being single, she was kind of in a state of being in between being single and being with someone else when she found out that she was pregnant.
It was a weird in-between space.
It's hard. It's hard being in a place where you don't know and you get a news update that changes your life. And it turns out that, hey, she wasn't going to be single for the rest of her life after all. Not entirely accurate, because Joseph ended up leaving the picture sometime after Jesus. Okay. We don't know when he ended up passing away. But by the time Jesus started his ministry, it was likely... It's believed that his father had passed away.
Yep. Because we know Joseph is there when Jesus is 12. So we know that Joseph and Mary were together at least 12 years of Jesus' life. It was fairly common back then for men to be older and more established than the women that they married. So they would tend to marry younger women, so late teens, early 20s. Because marriage was primarily for procreation. And
well,
it really
survival.
Still is, biblically speaking, it's mostly for procreation.
Survival as well.
The woman should be young to procreate, but the man should be a little bit older to provide. Or at least that's kind of the ideas going on there. So it's quite possible that Joseph was a fair amount older than Mary.
Yeah, the Bible doesn't, or rather, a lot of people in the Bible doesn't really touch on age very much, but that probably is the case. Well...
Yeah, I mean, that's a speculation. The Bible doesn't say how old either of them are.
Yeah. Well, either way, thank you for everything. I can't think of anything left to bring up here on this particular topic. This is
No, it's been great.
Definitely thank you for the time here. Still keep talking to you afterwards. I
Thanks for having me on.
I would like to do this again sometime, but we would need a good topic in order to like go down here. And sometimes these topics I need to do some research beforehand. When it comes down to it, pulling up memes, pulling up jokes, and pulling up past thoughts and even disagreements from these pages won't always cut it, because there's history involved in some of this stuff rather than just simply discourse or disagreements. And Mary, I feel like, is somewhere stuck between the both of them, where it's like you got what it says in the Bible, then you have people disagreeing upon, like Immaculate Conception, like sin and Jesus being born. Where was he at? Where was she at? So it's like, was she an exception or was she not? It's like she's stuck in between a lot of questions.
That's the thing. There's so much about Mary, and when you talk about one subject, you end up bouncing around a lot. Because Theotokos is just a title to describe both her and Jesus. It's to describe the fact that Jesus is fully God and fully human, and that she is his mother. And that's really all there is to it. But that topic leads to so many other things about Mary, and Mary is just an amazing topic to talk about.
I bet you, in a sense, if Joseph, the father, heard like even just a sprinkling of all of the questions and debates that popped up, I bet he's like, man, I'm glad I don't have that headache. Because frankly, that is a headache when you're just trying to figure things out, and just hearing this stuff is sometimes already just painful in the brain, because you're just like, ow, too much to handle.
Yeah.
Woo-hoo.
Oh,
all right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Is there any last words that you have here for anyone who is viewing and watching and possibly reviewing this later in the future? Because I know this is late.
Yeah. I can't think of anything else to add to that. I would encourage people to search the scriptures and to actually study this stuff and not just dismiss it. Because when you discover Mary, you rediscover Jesus.
You want to learn more about Jesus? Learn more about his mama.
Exactly.
Oh my word. Like, I love Jesus, but loving his mom, that might take a little bit of time there, because it's like, that's for me personally, because it's like, how do I handle this? The topic of women has already been challenging enough as it is with me being single, so it's like reapproaching a topic you already know about, but from a different angle, a different point of view. All right.
If you can learn to love Mary properly, you can love all women properly.
Ah, that is a great point.